Lauren Glickman, I am just thrilled that you are here. Thank you for accepting the invitation to share your gorgeous story. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. You make such a difference in the world. Tell us about the work that you do and the people that you help through your training.
Well, I've been doing work, resilience work for a long time now, since about 2007. And it started off, I worked with a lot of groups, working with animals, a lot of animal shelters, and worked with sanctuaries and all kinds of groups. And it's really expanded quite a bit to people who are working in high intensity environments and helping them develop methods at the level of self, group, and organization wide to build resilience into their work processes. Not so like they're working and then we'll go be resilient after work. It's how do we get it integrated? So
it's just amazing difference-making work. When you first came to a call, you and I got on the phone, and I'd seen the work that you were doing, and it was just a true thrill to get to speak with you and hear about the difference you were making in the world. And at the same time, there's this huge difference that you've been making in the world, and yet there was a piece left out of the equation. Say something about that, will you?
Yeah, what I realized is that as I was doing all of this work, I had this persistent feeling of, you know, this kind of possibility or happiness or balance or whatever somebody was striving for, that was possible for them, but not for me. I really had this fundamental core belief that took me a while to actually identify, that I just believed I was so broken. I was so not helpable, that was a great gift of mine that I just keep giving myself out over and over again. And so I was starting to feel despair and I just believed I would never actually be happy. But I was okay with that because that's what made me useful in society, right? So I had this whole notion that everything was, that's how it was supposed to be. And I was just trying to figure out how to live with that, how to deal with that, and just be the, oh, you know, martyr, poor me. You know, I have this terrible gift. I can help other people, but not myself.
Right? I want to take a second and check in with people. I mean, I know it's not like when I'm leading the program and check in, one of the things we do in the program is just really see how often the experiences that we have resonate with everybody else. And what we find is that we're often, when we're suffering with something, we're in the midst of a very human phenomenon. And when we're in our own head about it, it seems like it's just a personal shortcoming or something, but it is something that we find when we're suffering with something, that it's something that other people are dealing with as well. So I wanted to mention that. There's something, it's so common about, here I am, I'm providing this huge gift for people, but I'm left out of the equation. And I get to give at my own expense. And I think so many people have mentioned that on calls. My team and I speak to 160 people a month on average. And we hear similar things like this, whether it's a mother who is like, I feel like my kids take everything from me, or somebody in the workplace that feels like they give their all, but it's, I give at the expense of my own happiness and well-being. And here it was, you were providing this immense gift for people, teaching them how to be resilient in high intensity environments and traveling the world and delivering your proprietary education. And yet you were being drained by it and finding that you just needed to find methods of coping with the fact you were drained by it rather than eradicating the drain part and filling your own tanks. And that's where you were when you came to me. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done quite a few programs. You know, my master's degree was a really transformational program, and I've done multiple programs. And so I knew that there might be, even though I also knew there wasn't. I was like, maybe. And I luckily had that speck of possibility that I'll give it a shot. Why not? At least I'll be in community with people. I can look good. I can do my thing. At the very least, I'll impress people with how amazing I am, blah, blah, blah. You know, so there was, you know, I put myself in it knowing I always had this back door, which was just to fake it like I always have been, you know? Yeah. And the other thing that really was really incredibly profound in this experience for me is because I've been holding a space for people for so long, and I've been the one generating the container, what I call, you know, the room, and creating all of that for people, I didn't realize how missing it was for me to have a space for myself like that, where I could actually show up and be weak or make mistakes and own them differently or whatever it was. It was just, I was always performing or always holding that, and I just never allowed myself to be held. And that's huge for me. That is an enormous thing that this program allowed for me. And I didn't quite know that until I got there and went, whoa, I could tell the truth here. Like, that was huge. And it's not like I've been out there lying. It's just that I haven't been freely me, like free, really, you know, in this way. It's really was an interesting aha that I never could have predicted, because I thought I was going out being me. I truly did. That's one of my remarkable things, is that I can be so authentic and tell the truth in high intensity situations. And that's all true, but this is a whole different way of being truthful. It's different. It's a different way of doing that, or being, you know.
And when we initially spoke and you'd seen that you were left out of the equation, and that, you know, you were, like you said, telling the truth in whatever way you were, being authentic in whatever way you were, but there was still something limited. You'd actually said, when we spoke, you said, intellectually, I know that I'm successful. I mean, there's no question to that. Traveling the world, delivering your education. And you said, but emotionally and experientially, I don't feel it. I don't experience my own success. I'm cut off from it. And even though that was the case, and even though you'd said to me that, you know what, there are these things that are not working, and yet I think what I should do is I need to just accept that it's never going to get untangled. And you said, maybe that's the answer. And I said, well, I have a different answer. I have a different idea, Lauren. You could actually believe that this will work out for you in the way you want, that you could design a life and not live the life that's been there by default, which is, I can give to others and take care of them and ensure that vast communities of people are taken care of and resilient, but while I'm being depleted. And I just need to come up with tools to help me cope with that fact. Or I said, you could actually live in a world that, by your design, where your tanks could be filled rather than depleted while you're filling other people's tanks. And you said, okay, yes, I'm going to put I'm going to put myself first here for a moment so that all of my commitments can be fulfilled. I'm going to invest in myself. And so you did. You put yourself into Break Free Formula. And I know you had some skepticism at first. Tell us about that. Do you mind?
Well, yeah, my skepticism was just that, you know, that nothing was going to work with me. I mean, I've gone through all these transformational programs, and they make a big difference for a while. And some of them, you know, I mean, I wouldn't be here having this level conversation, perhaps, if some of that stuff didn't happen. I can't say. It's all built me as I am, and that's all great. But it was like I just have never been included before. In all of it, I can see. And that's the fundamental difference. It's not whether they made a difference in my life or not, because everything certainly has. But it's the type of difference, and whether, like, how much of it was for me, not for me to use for other people. Because that, like, it's all for me. I've just been collecting stuff through my life. Like, what'll be useful for helping someone else? What'll be useful for helping someone else. And I've got this like library of all these things I can use to help other people, but I'm just the mule carrying it all rather than like the person who's nourished by it as well. You know, that image just came to me, and it really describes how I've been relating to the gathering of wisdom. It's so I can schlep it for you in case you need it. You know,
the pack mule of your own life.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, I carry all these insights so you can use them when you're ready.
Yeah.
You know, and
meanwhile, not benefiting from them. So part of the skepticism was, this isn't going to work for me. I've already tried this.
Right.
And I mean, you teach programs to help people. So in some regard, I would imagine part of the skepticism was, I've given it the office. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was really interesting because, you know, one of the things that when I called, I was really feeling quite desperate. And I just was like, I'll take a phone call. Like at the very least, maybe I'll get some nugget I can stick in my backpack, you know? And at one point you said, well, if I can't even remember exactly how you put it, but you said something like, you know, if I decide that you can join the program. And I was like, wait, like I want to join. Like, what if I don't get to say? And like, I realized that that's how I'd been living my business life. Like, are you going to let me work with you? Are you going to let me work with you? Are you going to let me work with you? And so just the actual interaction of figuring out whether I was going to do this thing was an aha moment for me, and just my own orientation to what I was offering or receiving or all of that. So that kind of broke through some of that skepticism. I was like, this is a different kind of boat or a different kind of train I'm going to get on, or it just, my skepticism was like, this won't work for me. I've been there. I gave it the office. I understand how these things work, and I will manage my image effectively throughout this whole thing, just like I always do, you know? But that I didn't need to do it like that because it was actually safe to show up without the image management stuff that I'd been very successful at doing, you know?
Right. And you saw that you didn't need to, you know, manage your image. There was nothing to hide. There was no pretending or posturing necessary. You could truly be yourself. Mm-hmm. And that really is one of the things we pride ourselves on, is that the community is a sacred community. You know, out of those 160 people we speak to a month, sometimes we'll make an invitation to maybe 10 people a month. That's kind of an average, somewhere between, you know who's in the program. But we want to make sure that people are a fit for the community, as well as being clear that we are 100% confident we can solve their problem. I mean, we're committed that the call be valuable no matter what, but for the few people that are right for us, they also have to be a fit for the community, because it is a sacred place that I place. And what was your experience when you first came into the community? I mean, I know you said that there was, you know, none of the image management necessary, but what was your experience in becoming part of that community?
Well, I'd say it took me, you know, at least a couple calls I still was doing image management, I'd say, right when I first came on, the first call or two. And then I was like, oh, I don't really need to do it this way. And, you know, even when I came in and I wanted to schedule things right away and like do it the way I always do it, which is like be a good girl and like just really checklist and stuff. And what I got was, this is a place to experiment. And it was a place to show up and go first, even if you don't know what you're going to say, or like there was just this experimental kind of feeling that I got. I don't know if everybody would say that, but that's how I was like, I get to experiment here. This is a safe place for that. Yeah. And just seeing other people who are at different places in the program, it helped me envision myself, you know, which was, I think, a great way of building safety in there, or just creating that space that felt so good.
And what are the things that you've accomplished? What did you see? What opened up for you? And then what, of those insights, what did you turn into bona fide breakthroughs in your life?
Oh gosh, there's lots of them, and a lot of them are like, some of them are just in conversations, right? Just conversations. Some of them are negotiating contracts. Had a good experience negotiating a contract where I was able to have a breakthrough in a way that, I just can't wait for the next one, and then the next one, but also, the way that I'm showing up, I'm trying to think of like a concrete example, but sometimes I've been able to give the question or the issue back versus just over owning it, because I'm such a chronic helper and I've had challenges being helped. And so I'm constantly trying to make it easier. And so I've had moments where I just don't do that compulsively, and I'll just ask a question and let the group or the person grapple with it rather than overwork myself or try and do the work of the other person. So having less compulsion to fix and solve and more patience with just being in the question, right?
Right, which probably, I would imagine, helps your clients receive more and get a bigger benefit from the work you're doing with them if they're making it their own in that regard. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm finding it easier to model the very things that I'm coaching with,
Yes. Lauren, so great. One of the things I know that you mentioned initially when we spoke is about your ability to negotiate these contracts and earn what you're worth, and the business model that you were in. And you just touched upon that briefly a moment ago, but I wondered if you'd say something about that. Can I ask, is that something that you'd share with us?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is that I've worked in the not-for-profit sector for my entire career, pretty much. Peace Corps, then worked with animals, and now I have a consulting business, and pretty much all my clients are not-for-profit. So I have consistently and almost completely undercharged and undersold myself, and just constantly, I talk my clients down. Like, it's ridiculous that I actually do that. Like, I initiate those conversations. And, I've had this growing anger at myself for doing this, and, really wanted to create a new situation for myself. And so through this program, I've been able to really generate a couple different conversations that are feeling much more in alignment with where I want things to be headed. And I've been able to restrain myself from saying certain things. So it's not so much like what I said, but I actually didn't say a couple things, which was just as much a victory as, creating a new sentence. Just like withholding, and not generating that piece was huge.
It's no coincidence that the people we work with often double their income. I mean, I think of Tammy and Jeannie, and who literally twice what they were earning. When a person becomes clear about their own worth, we like to say the world lines up accordingly. And one of the ways that it most demonstrably does that is in their ability to earn. And I mean, you've seen people in the program who they get a job at a new position at work when they're told that you don't get raises with those, and they'll take a lateral move and earn 30% more. We've had 2 people in the past couple months do that, where it's 130% more for another, or double for a couple people that I just mentioned. But it's traditionally, that's one of the biggest areas that people are seeing a breakthrough in. And so it was so inspiring hearing you so early on in the program grappling with that yourself. Like, how am I going to charge what I'm worth now that I recognize it? And I acknowledge you for doing that. That's a big piece that so often people get stuck on and don't ever transcend, and then end up feeling, like you said, just kind of resentful, begrudging, regretful, and lose the love and passion for their work. And you found a way for it to benefit all yourself included in the equation.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. What else, Lauren? What else have you accomplished?
Well, just traveling is so much different now. I have had lots of anxiety around airports and just airlines and just doing all that logistical stuff. And, you know, I just have created a new relationship with myself. That's one of the biggest things in this whole process, is just being with myself differently. So the whole conversation in my head and how noisy it is or how much music there is up there, yeah, that has been a huge shift in how I walk around the world, especially when there's deadlines and timelines, and just the level of amping up that I used to do, that's just shifted quite a bit.
Since you travel around the world for work all the time, that's a huge breakthrough to have.
It's a big difference for sure.
Can I ask you to say for us, you said something when you completed with the group about what you'd said, your analogy about the music versus the noise, how it had been and how it is now.
Yeah, that, you know, I realized that there was so much noise going on in my head. It was so messy up there. You know, I had multiple things happen over the past 3 years that really had me believe that I just wasn't going to be happy again. And so there was all this noise about why that was the case. And just through some of the traditions and the setup of the whole program, I realized that I had not been listening to music at all, like hardly at all. I would listen to talk radio, and music was it had shrunk, and music has now become such a big part of my life again. And it's like this welcome back feeling. And I just realized the power of that particular thing in this world is huge. And I just want to harness that like crazy. So I have so much more music in my head now than noise. And I can sense it when the noise starts coming. I now know what to do. You know, I now have a way of interrupting myself and really getting back to the music instead of the noise.
That metaphor is so amazing. There was so much noise. The noise to music ratio was so out of proportion in favor of noise before, and now it's in favor of the music. It's just exquisite.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, you know, a lot of times I'm thinking, well, noise and silence might be the natural thing. But I also, one thing I'm getting through all of this is that it's not about either or. It's not about one or the other. There's so much more possibility inside of the between space. Like if it was noise or silence, music wouldn't exist, because I don't want noise, but music is noise, right? So that's another shift where I'm not so stuck in, I'm looking for silence, or that's not what I'm looking for. You know, I'm looking for joyful noise and really, you know, bold stuff that's really makes sense and harmonious. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually also, the last thing I guess I want to say is I actually physically feel different. You know, like walking through the airports or coming into a situation, even coming to do this conversation, you know, being on video always makes me feel uncomfortable, and like I get uncomfortable feelings in my stomach. But my inner narrative about all of it is so much different now, that the minute that starts, I realize that I'm going to do something, like I can have a conversation with myself, excuse me, that pulls me out of that, rather than the conversations I used to be having, which just had me go deeper into it. Yeah, so physically, my stomach feels a lot different walking around the world. Yeah.
And say something about your relationship to yourself and how that's shifted.
Well, I think, you know, really what happened is I went from being repulsed and disgusted by this idea that I had about who I am and who I was, who I always would be. And and this real protective, special, tender and gentle feeling I have when I think about myself now. Like, I really can appreciate myself in a different way. I was not appreciating myself. I had been convinced that I was disgusting and just gross. And I'm so not that. And I'm so clear. I just can't even imagine ever having that experience of myself again. Yeah.
What ramification do you think that will have on your life in the years to come, Lauren?
Well, I think, oh my gosh, just everything. You know, when I think about shame and embarrassment and just how that's like this thin film, I don't know if I agree with this analogy, actually. I'm going to say it and then we'll see. But this thin film all over stuff, this shame that just kept it dull a little bit, that coming off, just, it's like everything gets to lift up. It's not just this one item in my life. Like, it just seems like a lack of shame about being me. And so the possibilities are, you know, I mean, I want to write a book, but I've been very busy not writing a book because that layer of shame, like I'll be known or I'll be seen. And that was always really hard to think about. So I've written twice since starting this program, twice, which, you know, isn't all that much, but it's more than I've written in like 19 years. So I think it's a bit of a victory, you know? And so actually I've written 3 times now. So yeah, and that's going to get done, I believe. And I listen to myself and I'm like, oh, you know, you've said that before, but I have a much different experience of saying it. I don't expect anyone to listen differently at this point, but I'm noticing it's a different experience to think about, to do it, to think about doing it. Yeah, it's interesting.
And there's some congruency now. And you are saying that you're going to do it and you're doing it. And those two are lining up.
Yeah. And I've had this taste, just to bring it back to that experience inside the conversations we're having, where being actually seen for real was okay. Because that's what I think this book represents for me, is being seen for real and having the world know my dad was not perfect. I was not perfect. All of that stuff. I didn't have an experience of actually authentically showing up 100%. And I just did. And I think that is what's lending the power to this writing project, which I've been really unwilling to develop until now. Yeah, I just am connecting that right now. So,
and it just, as you speak about the breakthrough that you've had in relationship to yourself, from going from being repulsed to having these tender, loving feelings for yourself, and now that's your relationship with you. It sounds like that will impact everything. I mean, you've talked about it impacting the book, how that will impact everything. I mean, it sounds like it'll impact your work, it'll impact everything. Is that correct, or what do you see?
I see it. It's everything. It's like, you know, that analogy where all the boats on the water will rise for the water rising. It's like all the boats are my life endeavors, and I'm pulling it all up with this experience. Like, everything is going to be impacted. You know, all the boats on the water, I think. So yeah, it's surprising where these differences show up and what I'm able to say or not say, you know, and in my relationship, I'm living with my auntie right now, and our relationship is really shifting because of the way I'm hearing her. She hasn't changed a single bit. Nothing has changed with her. My experience physically is different now. Like, I physically feel different hanging out with her. And that has nothing to do with her. It's all because of the conversations I've been having before, during, and now, you know? Yeah.
And you spoke about initially when you and I had that first conversation on your breakthrough session about the fact that you had commitments, and fulfilling those commitments was making you miserable. So your commitment to make a difference for people in your work and that traveling around the world and delivering your programs, your commitment to take care of your aunt and make sure she was served and taken care of in your uncle's end of life care. And it sounds like you've still got those same commitments, but what's shifted is you're no longer miserable. They're making you happy, it sounds. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was really struggling with how I was going to make this work. But I'm not in that struggle right now at all. Like, I want this to last as long as possible, you know? Yeah, it's completely different to just be here helping her, you know?
So different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Lauren, a lot of times there are people that come to us who feel a similar skepticism, like, you know what, I've tried everything, it hasn't worked, or it's too late for me, or I'm too set in my ways, or I have a particular relationship with myself that is intractable and is never going to change. What would you say to them?
I would say, I get it. And what have you got to lose? I mean, I'd say I get it. But there's just no knowing. There's no knowing. We can't know. And I would suggest that the freedom lies in letting go of the certainty and just entertaining ideas and taking on that experimental stance, I think. Yeah. Because has gotten us lots of places. You know, we've all known lots of things, and that gets us one place. I think sometimes not knowing is the most powerful place we could stand, you know?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to hear anything else that you haven't said that you think would make a difference for people. Somebody who's struggling today and thinks that it's going to stay the same way for them.
I don't know. I think, you know, we are so much stronger than we believe ourselves to be. And I think we have so much more potential than we've been convinced about through growing up. I think, you know, I trusted you. You know, when we were talking, I heard something that I chose to trust because I was done trusting myself right then. Like, I just was like, oh, I need somebody who just can tell me where to go and what to start thinking about. And then every time I was getting stuck or stopped, I just had to trust the process and remember the insight I had way back when. So that's what I would say is just choose it and then trust it. No matter what you believe, no matter what you think, no matter what inner narrative you've got going on, it's just choosing it and then just do it. Even when you're not convinced, just keep doing it. Like that fish just keeps swimming, you know, that I've had that. That's some of the music in my head. Just keep swimming, you know? So you choose it and then you trust it. Even when you don't.
Go, Dory.
Yay. Go, Dory. Exactly.
Love it. Well, I want to give people an opportunity to also book one of these calls. So if you, like Lauren, realize that it's time to make a change for yourself, my team and I would love to offer you one of these free breakthrough sessions, just like Lauren got on. And, you know, we can't promise you an opportunity to work with us, but what we can promise you is a call that will reveal the truth of what's really going on in your life and what's keeping you stuck. And we can then help you get to the other side of it. It really is an incredibly powerful conversation. And where you book it is CherylHunter.com/schedule. The link right here on the screen, CherylHunter.com/schedule. schedule. I'll put it up in the end. I'll stick it in the comment section as well, so you can access that link quickly. Lauren, such a pleasure being with you today. Thank you for sharing your story and for sharing your heart and for making such a difference with people. I'm honored to be your coach and to know you.
I am so honored. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for everything that you do for people and just this brilliant way of approaching things.
Thank you. It truly is my life's work and my honor. All righty. Thanks, Lauren. All right. Hope to see you all on a call. Yes. Bye.